Hey, welcome to the HODL Review here exclusively on the chain. This is Jeff. Today we're going to talk a little bit about expectation for 2021 as it comes to blockchain, as it comes to Ripple. Ripple has, some great ideas, some great forecast when it comes to 2021, and there's actually something brand new that was just released from the US Chamber of Commerce. We're going to get into that a little bit and see what that is all about, because Ron Hammond, he was one of the original authors of the Token Taxonomy Act, is giving them a shout out and highlighting it. All of this going on while there's a brand new lawsuit being filed against Ripple. Let's check it out. Let's start right now.
And now, the HODL Review with Jeff on the chain.
All right, so we're going to get started here. What did I pull up? I pulled up the tweet. Let's start out here looking at crypto and blockchain, looking ahead to 2021 and beyond. Ever hopeful, ever excited coming out of Ripple, the company, because Ripple with RippleNet has been posting new gains as far as brand new customers coming to the space. It's really exciting to see the growth, because although the SEC has filed a case against Ripple, Ripple continues to grow their RippleNet customer base. And why is that exciting? And why do we talk about it a lot? Because the world is changing. The new asset class is really taking hold. It's got a nice growth pattern when we see blockchain, when we see digital assets. Although RippleNet isn't always about just the digital asset aspect, XRP, of their solution, because we do know that ODL, on-demand liquidity, is the game changer. But yesterday we were talking a little bit about on the live stream how there's a new partnership right now with the Lulu exchange reaching out to India. We see rails to Malaysia, all utilizing RippleNet. Many of these new rails coming out of SBI are in fact using ODL, but that's not what the conversation is going to be all about today, because we do want to dive in, and I want to get into, some of the things that are actually going on that are developing in the space. And one of them that we can really highlight, something that we can really focus in on here, is interoperability. And this statement is really key. This is coming from RippleX. So RippleX is saying right here, interoperability between networks is imperative. The more that developers look to build bridges and adopt open standards, the stronger all crypto will become. This was Monica Long actually making that statement. And this is really key. Interoperability between networks. Obviously, that's a big statement. Obviously, that's something that is very important for the overall success and development of this space. We've identified that. We know that that's important. This is one of the key reasons why we're starting to see the Flare network launching their digital asset Spark. And everything that they're doing, not just to take on Ethereum to be a competitor, but to help with the interoperability of the smart contracts, interoperability between fiat, between digital asset, interoperability between banks, the in-between rails moving money, which is RippleNet, or which is the XRP ledger that the RippleNet is built on, and also utilizing the digital asset XRP. So everything becomes very intertwined. Now, as we go here, let me switch over to a different angle, a different view, so we can actually get a better idea of what we're looking at. So I wanted to highlight something here, and this was Ron Hammond. Now, Ron Hammond was really focusing in and highlighting here a brand new work from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And he's saying here, great work, U.S. Chamber, and in particular, Julie Stitzel and Quadman on the effort. U.S. Chamber CCMC, the Chamber of Commerce, team has been incredible in supporting bipartisan legislation like the Token Taxonomy Act. Now, again, Ron Hammond was one of the authors of the Token Taxonomy Act, and engaging with industry experts to establish a clear regulatory framework. So what is the one thing that we talk a lot about? Overall, we talk a lot about the need for regulatory clarity in order for there to be complete mainstream adoption, mainstream growth. Without regulatory clarity, then the space is just kind of functioning and operating without direction. Now, one of the things that we talked about on today's live stream was a distinction between regulations and regulatory clarity. Regulations is something that the government is placing on individuals, placing on entities, business, etc., that is regulating a fine if you breach it. It is regulating your do's and don'ts. Regulatory clarity is providing the same kind of do's and don'ts, but it's providing more of an understanding of the space, how to operate, standard operating procedure within this space. How does a bank interact with the digital assets? How are the digital assets growing in the space? How do companies develop and release, launch, airdrop, whatever? They have to operate within a certain framework, and that framework has had a little bit of uncertainty without regulatory clarity. So we don't want over-regulation. Everybody is really looking for clarity, and that's one of the things that Ripple has been very instrumental in for a long period of time now, which is being very transparent about lobbying government for regulatory clarity. Now, one of the things that Ron Hammond has brought up here, which is really important, and he's reaching out to the chamber saying, hey, this is amazing. Yes, this is a bipartisan effort. The Token Taxonomy Act was bipartisan. It was something that was worked on, and Ron Hammond actually worked with Congressman Warren Davidson out of Ohio. And the Token Taxonomy Act was co-sponsored by Darren Soto out of Orlando, Florida. Now, it's very important to have bipartisan efforts working together in order to further develop the space. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out as we get into this, and I said, you know what, I'm reading through this. This is going to make a great video because it really exemplifies and clarifies that there is a group within government that does care about the digital asset space, that is really pulling for the expansion of this space and having that regulatory clarity. Another one of those individuals is Congressman Tom Emmer right here. Now, I was going to play this video as a clip. We actually played it as part of our live stream and went through and reviewed it. But this is for the Center for Capital Markets Competitiveness of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And this is so key. So what was one of the things that they launched? What's one of the things that they just released is the Digital Assets, a framework for regulation to maintain the United States status as an innovation leader. Now, the one thing that we can be certain of, that this isn't something that just came about right now. They didn't just all of a sudden launch this in the past week. There's a lot of time and effort and due diligence that has gone into developing and writing this piece, and it's probably been months and months in the workings, if not maybe over the period of a year or so. But it's really key that something like this is coming out now. We have a new head of the OCC coming in. We have a new head of the SEC. We have a new Treasury Secretary, all coming out with some comments about what's going on in the digital asset space, but they can keep commenting. What's required is more clarity of functionality so that all the companies in the space understand and have a common understanding of exactly what is going on and how it's going on. So let's get into this document. Now, obviously, we could go through, and it's 62 pages long, and we could spend the next hour trying to figure this out. But I want to go straight to 2 points. One is an overview of the regulatory landscape. The other is payments specifically. Now, why is it important to look at the overview? Because this is laying out the landscape, as they're saying. This is laying out the criteria of which the government, the Chamber of Commerce, others are going to be then looking at the digital asset space. So here, regulators in the U.S. have treated digital assets in different ways, with the lack of uniformity and multiplicity of regulators leaving a complex regulatory landscape for the market to navigate. At the federal level, regulatory jurisdiction over digital assets has been asserted by numerous financial regulators, including the SEC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which is the CFTC, and the OCC. And one of the things that we know is that Brian Brooks did promise regulatory clarity in a short period of time, and now he's no longer head of the OCC. And then, of course, you have the Federal Reserve Board of Governments, or the Fed Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, and the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is FinCEN. And then you have the state. So you've got so much going on. And how do you coordinate? And one of the things they're saying is more coordination among regulatory agents is needed. Now, how did this start off, though? Lack of uniformity, multiplicity of regulators. So there's a lot of confusion. How do you get regulatory clarity if all the agencies aren't talking the same language? So now you have to bring everyone together. You've got to get some clarity within the government bodies to understand the development of this space, the significance of this space, and what is one of the key features of this entire article that, or this I don't know, it's not a proposal, but this this. I don't even want to call it, it's a booklet or, whatever, however you want to, lay this out. A study, I guess, is a better terminology, this whole study. But digital assets, a framework for regulation to maintain the United States status as an innovation leader. So we can't lose that. That's, I think, one of the most vital aspects. Now, it was just launched here in January, so it's fresh off the press, but this idea of the U.S. Maintaining leadership in this space and not losing it is vital. And I think there's many within the body, elected and working in government, that do understand. But there's many that are in charge that lead many of the big committees that don't understand and have been roadblocks, that have been barriers over the past couple of years to allowing regulatory clarity to happen. And in many cases, it was a political barrier because anything good coming out of the opposition party was deemed bad, even though it was great. So now here's a perfect example. Even though we have bipartisan efforts within the Token Taxonomy Act, it didn't get to the point where it needed to get to. There was a lot of resistance, a lot of misunderstandings and misinformation being circulated when it comes to digital asset. So here, going on, regulatory uncertainty in combination with some regulators' approach to enforcement and some rules and regulations that simply need updating. So like the Howey test, or parts of what the Token Taxonomy Act was looking at, the Securities Acts. And there's other elements that need updating, not changing, but updating, editing, updating language. It has created an environment in which many market participants do not possess the wherewithal and the ability to innovate and do business in the U.S. without an unacceptable risk of running afoul of regulatory requirements, even when they are in good faith endeavoring to comply. So now, what is one of the things that we're seeing with all of this is that the SEC has filed a complaint against Ripple for getting involved in selling, according to the SEC, an unregistered security, which would be XRP. Now, with all these misunderstandings, the SEC has their approach. FinCEN has their approach. OCC has their comment. Everybody has a comment. Now, the SEC could be looking at this completely incorrectly because they're looking at it in terms of what is a security. How do you define what a security is? And they're then trying to approach a digital asset that, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, they have they're decentralized. They're not centralized and controlled by one entity. Although, like Ethereum, XRP was at one point and could have been considered a centralized asset, which is no longer the case. And the SEC is trying to argue that 7 years ago, in 2013, in fact, Ripple sold an unregistered security. So they're claiming that they had a sale of this digital asset that today is decentralized in nature and is being sold all over the world by exchanges and doesn't fit within the confines of what would be deemed a security, which we're waiting on Ripple to respond to that complaint, and that response hasn't come yet. but it should happen soon. And then we'll see what their response is. Then there's pretrial hearings on the 22nd and maybe even a settlement in the near future. We don't know. But here, so the SEC regulates all aspects of the U.S. securities market, including capital raising, secondary trading of securities, broker-dealer activities, exchanges and alternate trading, investment advisors, investment companies, accounting, auditing, and much more. The SEC has been active in the digital asset ecosystem, perhaps most notably when it comes to so-called initial coin offerings. I don't know what's so-called because that's what it's called. ICOs. So it's the so-called. And other distributions of digital assets that the SEC has treated as securities. So like the KIK case. So we have KIK, SEC versus KIK with their KIN token. And I made a video about it that the technical aspect of it, the camera shut off. So I didn't release the video. I didn't redo it. But kind of lost the moment. But the key with that case was that in the outcome of the case, in fact, the SEC said, well, KIK, you need to pay a fine. And they didn't have any requirement for them to then register KIN as a security, although the whole case was that KIN was a security, and they didn't even comment on whether or not the retail holders could still buy and sell. So based on the legal understandings of it that people have written already, this is only in October, that KIK had to pay the fine. They had 3 years where they had, if they sold more KIN, they would have to tell the SEC. And in fact, it doesn't, the buy and sell of the KIN token didn't extend to retail holders. So there's still buying and selling going on to an extent. It doesn't even extend really to the exchanges per se. So there was a lot of, still misunderstanding with that, but even the SEC in their ruling wasn't, 100% clear. They're leaving a little bit of ambiguity, even with, some comments on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so the need for some simplification and some clarity is definitely there, but the SEC maybe never had the right appetite to provide regulatory clarity. We don't know. Maybe they're waiting on Congress to finally finalize something and actually make a statement of regulatory clarity. Maybe they're waiting for Congress to make some changes. That could very well be, because there are multiple bills, even like the Token Taxonomy Act, that were put in front of Congress, in front of committee, and just never went anywhere. So here we could say, okay, when is digital asset a security? Obviously, we can go through a lot of this, but here to conclude that a digital asset is a security is subjected to the federal securities regulatory regime, assuming none of the typical exemptions from those laws, rules, and regulations apply. And then they have to try to apply the Howey test. And we can go down and down and down. So like the Security Act of 1933. And then they refer here in making this determination, the SEC and courts apply the Howey test, which originates from a 1946 U.S. Supreme Court decision, SEC versus W.J. Howey Co. And we talk about this a lot, that it was unique to that orange farm. It was unique to those oranges. It was unique to that farmer. But in fact, the SEC found that he did sell unregistered securities when he sold a part of his farm to investors. And now they're trying to take that same test and apply it to digital assets like XRP, which would mean that as part of the Howey test, the XRP digital asset would have to fit into some understanding that when you bought it, you thought that you had a piece of this company Ripple, when in fact, many people buying XRP, they don't even know what Ripple is. They have a loose understanding of RippleNet, but what they do know is that XRP has been in the top 3-4 digital assets for a very long time. Now it's slipped a little bit, and the retail investors are being punished due to this lack of clarity, this lack of uncertainty, and allowing the SEC to file suit with a little bit of misunderstanding. And so they're trying to work through, but by filing suit, it's creating uncertainty with the retail holder, because 7 years have gone by and the SEC has issued no statement as it pertained to and related to Ripple's activities. And in fact, the SEC's had multiple opportunities to approach it, as we've learned, and as we will learn as the case progresses. But let me digress back into this, because this is really important. I mean, there's multiple aspects. So, the chamber is providing some clarity about, when is it a security? custody of digital assets, payments, digital asset transmitters, CBDCs. That there's so much. We could spend, like I said, an hour on this. And I don't want to go into all of it, but I do want to finalize this video going into the payments. I know we're coming up on the 20-minute mark. This is a long video, but this part I think is really, really important. So here it says the payments. Now the payments, you're going to get some understanding that even within the chamber here, and the part of the innovation, why does the U.S. have to maintain this leadership as an innovator? Well, it sounds very familiar when we compare what we're gonna go over here with what Ripple has been doing with the RippleNet solution and remittance payments and beyond. What the Stellar Foundation is attempting to do with XLM and beyond. And other digital assets in the space addressing very similar ideas. But Ripple, with their RippleNet, is approaching many of what we're going to just read here to the T. So let's look here. An aspect of banking that blockchain could change significantly is payment systems, which is the processes for clearing and settling transfers of value between parties. Now, one thing that when we reviewed this video with Tom Emmer, he was referencing this exact thing, that it's a game-changing solution when you can have two parties settling their transaction without a third party interfering and potentially corrupting the process. A centralized third party that just adds another layer of uncertainty and confusion. So, all right, so the product for clearing and settlement. Payment systems in the U.S. are complex. They're governed by statutes, rules, regulations, and case law at the state and federal level. The legal principle relevant to a particular payment system generally depend on the method of payment, right? So we know that the types of transactions cleared, settled. So let's skip down here. Although payment systems have made significant advancements over the years, certain elements remain ripe for further improvements. Now, cross-border remittance payments is 100% a component that is broken. It's difficult. It's expensive. There's no transparency. There's confusion. If you have to use SWIFT, it could take the length of time it takes to process a payment, 3 to 5 days. Zero transparency, and that settlement process takes a very, very long time. And if there's an error, then you don't know about it, and you could lose 5 days in your transaction. So that's one big element, including blockchain tech and digital assets that can offer those improvements. So it's been identified. It's important to distinguish between doing clearing and settlement. So as we know, clearing refers to the process by which the instruction to transfer funds are sent from one financial institution to another. So these instructions, similar to what happens with SWIFT, they're transferred, they're communicated. So here it's transmitted bilaterally on a real-time basis between two financial institutions. The SWIFT code in the remittance payments and the cross-border payment process, that is a component of the clearing aspect of it. Those are the clearing instructions coming from this bank, going to that bank. Then the most critical element of it after you get that communication happening, then is the settlement, which is the finalization of moving money from here to here. So that's how they refer to the finalization, the legal transfer of property rights and funds from one party to the next. Now that process, as I mentioned, could take 3 to 5 days or longer, and there's no transparency. RippleNet, as we started talking about in the very beginning, identified the clearing aspect, which SWIFT does, but they're doing it much better and they've modernized. But the game-changing element is ODL, which is the on-demand liquidity, which allows for the immediate settlement of this process. So what they're talking about here is the clearing and settlement. So you have clearing as one element, settlement is the other. And the settlement, without that happening, means that the transaction is null and void because you have no legal transfer of property rights of these funds. Now, cross-border payments, including foreign remittance, are frequently cited as one of the most important opportunities for digital asset banking. Where have we heard that before? How many times have we heard that? This is something that we've talked about a lot on the show. And when people look at you say, oh, you guys are talking about the bankers coin and the maxis and Bitcoin and Ethereum, and that's all you should talk about. Hey, guess what? The remittance payment market is a game-changing market. That's why we're excited about it. That's why we're talking about it. The digital asset blockchain space is critical, is vital to the changeover of how all business is done in the world. That is a fact. The fact that RippleNet is trying to tackle that while nobody else is really trying to do it, other than maybe R3 and maybe a couple others. But you don't see anybody utilizing Bitcoin to tackle foreign remittance payments at the level that RippleNet is doing it. Can you have peer-to-peer transactions? Yes. But RippleNet is moving large amounts of money through the clearing process right now, or at least they're doing that part of the transaction. Settlement is still happening through Nostro Vostro or other facilitators to make that final settlement happen, unless it's the organizations that are using ODL, which we know SBI out of Japan is using RippleNet and using ODL in many of those instances. In fact, MoneyGram was using ODL not for the retail transfer of money, but for the foreign currency exchange aspect of what's pre-built and baked into the XRP ledger. So there's so many variables and varieties to what can be out of the XRP ledger that is doable, and the future development of what RippleNet can offer, what Ripple could offer, is astonishing. But it fits within these guides of what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is talking about here. U.S. border payments, including foreign remittance, are frequently cited as one of the most important opportunities for digital assets in banking. So cross-border payments are transactions involving individuals, entities, banking, operating in at least two different countries. The current framework for cross-border payments is burdened by inefficiencies and various processes and fees, with numerous intermediaries playing a part in each payment. So this isn't Ripple saying it. It's not us discussing it. This is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce highlighting the fact that this framework is burdened by inefficiencies, that it's broken. The framework also lacks harmonization and standardization. So right now you have the clearing aspect is harmonized and standardized through SWIFT. Old, outdated. Still works, but it's outdated. It does not connect the settlement part of the process seamlessly, harmonized and standardized within it. So it says here, with different types of systems, payment instructions, and fields that are not interoperable with each other. That's another key, interoperability. How did we start off the conversation? We talked about interoperability is going to be the game changer. Interoperability is what you achieve through the XRP ledger. Through RippleNet, they talk about interoperability, meaning that you can transfer and exchange dollars to pounds, dollars to Bitcoin, dollars to euro, euro back to dollar. It's interoperable. It allows for the seamless transaction of the process, of the clearing and the settlement. So it says, under current border payment system, several intermediaries are involved in facilitating, confirming, and processing the transaction information. So you have all these hands. This is why it takes 3 to 5 days. This is why there's mistakes. Most of these intermediaries charge fees and add costs to the payment processing for cross-border transfers, a lot of them, plus foreign currency exchange. Most move these intermediaries before settlement can even be achieved. The time it takes to transfer money can be lengthy and uncertain, and participants must manage various time zones. Generally, it takes at least some number of days, if not longer. That's key. Cross-border payments, including foreign remittance, are frequently cited as one of the most important opportunities for the digital asset banking. That's it. We can go further into this. There's a lot more to talk about. But this is, absolutely, I think, one of the most important pieces that's come out. Now, again, this didn't just happen in the past week. It didn't happen in 2 weeks. This is something that has happened over the past couple years, with Ron Hammond and Warren Davidson with the Token Taxonomy Act, Tom Emmer with the many bills that he's done, Darren Soto with the many bills that he's done. Now the U.S. Chamber of Commerce issuing this study guide to get some clarity within all of these agencies, bringing the agencies, all these 3-letter agencies, SEC, OCC, 4-letter letter agencies, CFTC, FDIC, bringing them all together with some understanding of here you go, here's your book, here's how you understand. Now let's provide some regulatory clarity and allow business to start being business and allow the U.S. to continue being an innovator. Hey, if you like today's video, make sure you give a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. Go check out the live channel. It's in the description below. We're streaming 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 6 days a week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the live stream. I look forward to seeing you on the next video, so make sure you come and visit. I'll see ya.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.